On Christmas Eve, my daughter-in-law locked me out of their home, then called me this old woman in a pain, all while my son William laughed inside. I simply smiled, leaving their perfectly wrapped gifts on the porch. They had no idea their picture-perfect world was about to shatter. Like, share, and let me know the city you're listening from so I can see how far my story has reached. The bitter wind whipped around me, a cruel prelude to the scene unfolding behind the grand, heavy oak door of William and Victoria's home. It was Christmas Eve, a night meant for warmth, for family, for the soft glow of festive lights. Instead, I stood on their porch, the cold seeping into my bones, reflecting the chill that had just pierced my heart. A cacophony of cheerful voices and the crackle of a roaring fire drifted through the thick wood, mocking my solitude. Then Victoria's voice, sharp and shrill, cut through the festive din, carrying with it a poison that froze me in place. This old woman is such a pain. Nobody can stand her anymore." The words resonated in the crisp night air, a raw, unfiltered declaration. It wasn't just the insult, it was the casual cruelty, the dismissive tone, as if I were a forgotten item of furniture rather than a living, breathing person. William's mother. And then, the sound that truly shattered me. My son, William's warm laughter. It wasn't a nervous chuckle, nor a surprised gasp. It was a genuine, unrestrained laugh, mingling with the other joyful sounds by the fireplace. A sound that confirmed his complicity, his acceptance of his wife's venom. Only 3 weeks prior, the prospect of this very Christmas Eve had filled me with a rare and fragile hope. William had called, his voice unusually warm, even jovial. "Mother," he had said, "we'd love for you to join us for Christmas Eve. It'll be a proper family gathering this year." His invitation had been unexpected, a flicker of the connection I thought we'd lost. I remembered the surge of joy that had rushed through me, softening the edges of the loneliness that had become my constant companion since my husband's passing. I had held on to that phone call, replaying it in my mind, a lifeline promising redemption. With renewed vigor, I had thrown myself into preparations. I had spent hours carefully selecting and wrapping gifts, each one chosen with thought and love for William, Victoria, and their 2 children. The thought of their faces lighting up, even for a fleeting moment, was enough. I had driven for nearly 2 hours through heavy snow, the flakes swirling against my windshield like a winter ballet, my old car struggling on the icy roads. Every bump, every slip was worth it, I told myself. I was eager, so profoundly eager for the warmth of family, for the embrace that Christmas was supposed to represent. My heart, brittle with years of quiet longing, was open, vulnerable. Upon arrival, I had rung the doorbell, the chimes echoing faintly within the house. I waited, a hopeful smile on my face, my breath misting in the cold. After a tense silence, the heavy door opened, but only a crack. Victoria's face, framed by the narrow opening, was not welcoming. Her eyes, usually sparkling with ambition, were cold, almost hostile. She stared at me, her gaze unblinking, devoid of any festive cheer. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice low and sharp, as if I had appeared out of thin air, an unwelcome apparition. My hopeful smile faltered. "William invited me, dear, for Christmas Eve." Her lips tightened into a thin line. She took a quick, almost furtive glance over her shoulder, as if ensuring no one inside was privy to our exchange. "Oh, that," she scoffed, dismissing my explanation with a wave of her hand. "Look, Eleanor, we have very important business partners here tonight. This is a crucial evening for William's career. Your presence," she stressed each word, "is simply not appropriate." "Not appropriate," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, the cold seeping deeper into my chest. "But William called me himself. He sounded so sincere." Victoria let out a short, humorless laugh. "Sincere, please. You know William. He feels sorry for you. He mentioned it to me, pitying your situation. But I told him we can't have distractions tonight. Not with Mr. Henderson and his wife here." She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, laced with barely concealed contempt. "Honestly, Eleanor, William just feels pity. Nothing more." The blow landed squarely, precisely. Pity, not love, not family. Pity. Just as my mind reeled from the fresh wound, another wave of laughter erupted from inside, closer this time. Through the slightly open door, I could hear Victoria's voice, amplified, clearly audible to her guests and to me. Honestly, she's such a pain in the ass, she hissed, her voice dripping with derision, referring to me, standing right there. And then the unmistakable sound of William's laugh. Loud, clear, echoing his wife's cruelty. He heard her, he heard me, and he laughed. My world tilted. The cold outside was nothing compared to the ice forming in my veins. Victoria straightened up, her face a mask of feigned concern, but her eyes held a predatory glint. Perhaps you should consider spending the holidays at a senior center, Eleanor, she suggested, her tone patronizing. They have lovely programs there for elderly women in your situation. You wouldn't be alone. Her words were a final, brutal blow, belittling my very existence, my worth, reducing me to a situation. My heart didn't just break, it shattered into a million irreparable pieces. William, my son, my own flesh and blood, was inside, warm and comfortable, laughing with guests, while his mother stood out in the bitter cold, being systematically dismantled by his wife. He made no effort to check on me, no movement towards the door, no sign of concern, not even a flicker of regret in his laugh. It was as if I simply ceased to exist for him. Silently, I turned away from the door, the carefully wrapped gifts still clutched in my numb hands. I walked to the edge of the porch, placing them gently beside a frosted potted plant, their colorful paper a stark contrast to the desolate scene. Each gift represented a piece of my hope, now abandoned. I walked back to my car, the biting wind my only companion. The drive home was a blur of tears and snow, but amidst the deep, searing hurt, a newfound clarity began to settle over me. The fog of longing and expectation lifted, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Their perfect, curated world, built on such callousness, felt fragile. As I drove through the silent, snow-covered streets, a strong premonition arose within me, chilling yet invigorating. Someone or something would soon arrive to dismantle their perfect world, and I knew with absolute certainty that I would be ready for it. The drive home that Christmas Eve was an agonizing crawl through a world dressed in festive mockery. Each twinkling light strung across a suburban house, each glimpse of a family gathered in a brightly lit window, served as a fresh reminder of my own stark rejection. The icy grip on the steering wheel matched the cold knot in my stomach. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the familiar roads, but my vision was blurred not by the flakes, but by the unshed tears that pressed behind my eyes. I navigated by instinct, my mind replaying Victoria's words, William's laughter, a cruel, discordant carol that drowned out the quiet hum of my engine. The distance between William's grand, overflowing home and my humble apartment felt immeasurable, a chasm not of miles but of belonging. When I finally unlocked my door, the silence that greeted me was not peaceful, it was deafening. My small, quiet apartment, usually a refuge, now felt impossibly lonely, a stark, hollow echo of the distant sounds of their festive laughter. I didn't bother to turn on many lights, preferring the subdued glow of the tiny Christmas tree I had painstakingly decorated a week prior. It stood in the corner, a modest fir, its branches adorned with a collection of handmade ornaments. My gaze settled on a crude clay angel, its wings slightly chipped, painted with a child's clumsy hand. Then, a brightly colored paper chain, faded with age. A lopsided star made from popsicle sticks, each one a tangible memory, a relic from William's childhood, crafted with earnest concentration and presented to me with beaming pride. As I stared at these remnants of a bygone era, Victoria's cruel words, "Nobody can stand her anymore," relentlessly echoed in the quiet space. They bounced off the walls, reverberating in my head, mocking the fragile sentimentality of my little tree. Could it be true? Had I become so burdensome, so unlovable? The sting was unbearable, forcing my mind to flee, to seek refuge in a time when I was not a pain, when I was simply mom. My thoughts drifted back to a different April in 1982, when my world was vibrant with promise. The day William was born. I remembered the path to William's independence wasn't complete with his high school diploma. College, a dream he had held since Arthur first encouraged him, became the next hurdle, and with it, another profound sacrifice on my part. The meager savings I'd managed to squirrel away from my 3 jobs were a drop in the ocean of tuition fees. To ensure William received the best education possible, to set him up for the future he deserved, I took out a second mortgage on our small home. The thought of losing the only place Arthur and I had ever truly called our own sent a shiver down my spine, but William's future was paramount. I convinced myself it was a worthy investment, a final push that would bridge the gap between his childhood and a successful adulthood. During his college years, the distance between us, both physical and emotional, stretched further. His calls, once a weekly ritual, grew shorter and less frequent. His conversations revolved around new friends, demanding studies, and ambitious career plans. He was building a life, vibrant and full, a life largely without me. I listened, always, with a mother's proud ear, trying to catch every detail, every nuance of his growing independence. Each "I'm busy, Mom, gotta go" left a tiny ache, a silent understanding that his world was expanding, and mine remained stubbornly small. I cherished the brief glimpses of his happiness, even if it meant my role was diminishing. The day of his graduation arrived, a milestone I had worked tirelessly for. I sat in the sprawling university auditorium, a small, solitary figure amidst a sea of boisterous families. My heart swelled with pride as I watched William cross the stage, a confident, handsome young man in his cap and gown. Yet a pervasive loneliness gnawed at me. After the ceremony, amidst the joyous chaos, William found me, a quick hug, a fleeting smile. He then announced his plans, almost as an afterthought. "I got a job, Mom, in another state, moving in 2 weeks." My heart sank. Another state, another layer of distance, another barrier to the already strained connection. I simply nodded, mustering a brave smile, congratulating him, while inside a small, persistent voice whispered about the sacrifices I had made for this moment, for this ever-growing separation. 3 years ago, the phone call came that would further redefine my relationship with William. His voice, buoyant with excitement, announced, "Mom, I'm getting married to Victoria." He spoke of her with a fervor I hadn't heard from him in years, describing her as brilliant, beautiful, and ambitious. I offered my congratulations, genuine in my happiness for him, and even as a tiny tremor of unease settled within me. Their wedding was a lavish affair, a spectacle of wealth and influence. The grand ballroom, overflowing with Victoria's family and their affluent acquaintances, felt utterly alien to me. I was a guest, yes, but I felt like an anomaly, an obligation rather than an integral part of the celebration. Victoria's family, impeccably dressed and radiating an air of effortless superiority, were gracious enough, but their polite smiles rarely reached their eyes. I was acutely aware of my simple dress, my slightly worn shoes, my quiet presence in a room full of glittering diamonds and booming laughter. I was William's mother, but I was also an outsider. Victoria herself was a stunning woman, intelligent and poised, with an air of sophisticated confidence. She was polite to me, almost excessively so, but her politeness felt like a performance. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, seemed to scrutinize me, weighing my modest appearance against her opulent surroundings. I felt judged, measured, and inevitably found lacking. I could almost hear her silent calculation. This woman is William's mother, a necessary but unfortunate attachment. I tried to connect, to find common ground, but her responses were always carefully guarded, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. After they married, the already infrequent calls from William diminished further. When he did call, Victoria was often in the background, her voice occasionally interjecting, offering suggestions or seemingly innocent observations. Sometimes I could hear her prompting William, "Tell your mother about X, dear," or "Don't forget to mention Y." It was subtle at first, then increasingly overt, as if she were a gatekeeper, carefully curating the information William shared, controlling the narrative of his life. The true extent of her influence in William's compliance became devastatingly clear when I was hospitalized with pneumonia a year ago. I was gravely ill, the infection rapidly spreading. In my delirium, I called William, needing to hear his voice, needing the comfort of my son. He didn't answer. A few days later, after I had stabilized, he called back, his tone apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Mom. Victoria told me your call wasn't urgent, that you just wanted to chat. She said you were fine." My heart sank. Victoria had intercepted my desperate plea for help, distorted it, and William had believed her. He had chosen to trust her over his own mother, even in a moment of crisis. Sitting alone in my apartment that Christmas Eve, surrounded by the ghosts of Christmases past, staring at William's childhood ornaments, the truth I had subconsciously avoided for years finally slammed into me with undeniable force. It wasn't just distance that had eroded our bond, nor was it merely his independence. Victoria had systematically, meticulously erased me from William's life. She had carefully constructed a barrier, brick by brick, using her influence, her charm, and her subtle manipulations to isolate him from me. And the most painful realization of all was that William had allowed it. He had chosen to be complicit, to prioritize his wife's agenda over his mother's well-being and her love. All my sacrifices, all the years of hard work and self-denial, suddenly felt hollow, pointless, a bitter joke played on a naive, loving mother. But amidst the profound pain and the crushing weight of betrayal, a glimmer of defiance ignited within me. Victoria, in her arrogance and her certainty of victory, had no idea. She had no idea the fire she had just kindled in a mother's heart. She had no idea the consequences of her actions or the storm she had unwittingly unleashed. The sweet, forgiving Eleanor was gone. In her place, a new resolve was hardening, cold and sharp as the winter night. The days following Christmas blurred into a gray, hollow routine, each moment steeped in the lingering pain of rejection. My apartment, usually a haven, now felt like a prison of my own loneliness. I ate sparingly, slept fitfully, and the small, decorated tree seemed to mock me with its silent promise of cheer that never arrived. The premonition I'd felt on Christmas Eve, that someone would dismantle their perfect world, had receded, replaced by a dull ache of resignation. I was simply existing, waiting for the new year to erase the bitter taste of the old. Then, on December 28th, 3 days after the Christmas Eve debacle, my phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar number, one I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I answered, my voice a little hoarse from disuse. "Hello?" A young man's voice, polite yet laced with an undeniable uncertainty, came through the line. "Is this Eleanor Henderson?" he asked, a slight tremor in his tone. My heart gave a strange lurch. "Yes, this is Eleanor," I replied, a flicker of curiosity momentarily displacing my apathy. "My name is Ethan," he continued, his voice gaining a touch more confidence, though still cautious. "I think you might be my grandmother." The words hit me like a physical blow. Grandmother, my mind reeled. I had grandchildren through William, yes, but this voice was clearly not one of them. And he called me Eleanor Henderson, not Grandma. The name felt utterly alien coming from this stranger. "Grandmother," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, a sudden, inexplicable sense of disbelief washing over me. I don't understand. My grandchildren are quite young." "I know this sounds strange," Ethan quickly interjected, "but I'm Victoria's son, from her previous marriage." Stunned, that was the only word. Utterly, completely stunned. Victoria had a son? A son from a previous marriage? My mind raced, trying to process this revelation. William had never mentioned it. Victoria had never mentioned it. All these years since they first met, through their engagement and marriage, not a single word. My brain struggled to reconcile this new information with everything I thought I knew about my daughter-in-law. "Victoria has a son?" I stammered, the shock making my voice tremble. I was not aware. William never said anything. Ethan let out a sigh, a sound heavy with weariness. "No, I imagine he didn't. She's kept me a secret from him and from you for years. But she's also kept you a secret from me." He then dropped another bombshell. "Victoria told me that you were difficult, unstable. She said you had serious alcohol problems, and that was why she and William had cut ties with you. She painted a picture of a rather volatile woman, someone they couldn't possibly associate with." The air left my lungs in a ragged gasp. The sheer audacity, the depth of her deception was breathtaking. Not only had she systematically erased me from William's life, But she had also slandered my character to her own son, creating a monstrous caricature to justify her lies. Tears, hot and furious, finally welled up, spilling down my cheeks. Ethan, I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. I have never, not once, had an alcohol problem. I have never been difficult or unstable, and I swear to you on my husband's grave, I have never met you. I never even knew you existed. There was a pause on the other end, a moment of profound silence as my words hung in the air. I believe you, Ethan finally said, his voice softer now, tinged with a new understanding. I suspected as much, which is why I took matters into my own hands. Her story about you, it never felt right. Something was always off. He explained that 6 months prior, driven by an unshakable instinct, he had hired a private investigator. The investigator had meticulously pieced together my life, verifying my identity, my address, confirming I was indeed William's mother. Armed with this undeniable proof, Ethan had confronted Victoria just yesterday. She confessed, Ethan revealed, his voice taut with suppressed anger. She admitted to lying about everything, about you, about me. She said she wanted to start fresh with William without any complications. I was a complication. You were a complication. He continued, his voice growing more agitated. And she lied to William too. She told him I was a difficult child from a messy previous marriage, and that ongoing custody battles prevented my involvement in their lives. She twisted everything, made herself the victim, the one trying to protect him. My own story, the raw, brutal truth of Christmas Eve, tumbled out of me. I recounted Victoria's cruel words, her dismissive attitude, the door shut in my face, the suggestion of a senior center, and then the ultimate betrayal. William's laughter, echoing his wife's contempt. I didn't hold back, the pain and anger fueling my words, painting a vivid picture of the humiliation I had endured. Ethan listened in silence, a heavy, disbelieving quiet broken only by my choked sobs. When I finished, the line was still for a long moment, filled with the weight of shattered illusions and cold-hearted deceit. Jesus Christ, Ethan finally uttered, his voice low, a mix of shock and profound sadness. I had no idea it was that bad. He sounded genuinely horrified. Mom, Eleanor, I am so sorry for everything, for what she did to you, for what she did to me. It's not your fault, Ethan, I managed to say, feeling a strange surge of warmth for this stranger, this unexpected ally. Yes, it is, he countered, his voice firm, resolute. I should have pushed harder, sooner. But that ends now. Eleanor, I need to see you immediately. Can I come to your place? Before I could fully answer, he continued, his voice hardening with conviction. And then, after we talk, we're going to confront them, both of them, William and Victoria. I want them to see that their lies didn't work. I want them to see the truth face to face and answer for what they've done. A spark, dormant since Christmas Eve, ignited within me. Ethan's words were not merely an offer of comfort. They were a declaration of war. My premonition, it seemed, was finally coming true. The story is just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to hear every part of this incredible journey. You don't want to miss the shocking twists coming up. True to his word, an hour later, I watched from my living room window as a rental car, a sleek black sedan, pulled up to the curb outside my apartment building. A tall young man emerged, his frame athletic, his movements purposeful. My heart fluttered with a mixture of nerves and a burgeoning sense of anticipation. As he stepped out, I saw him more clearly, and a gasp escaped my lips. He had William's eyes, the same deep-set, intelligent gaze, though softer, less guarded. I waved tentatively from the window, and he looked up, a hesitant smile touching his lips before he strode towards the building entrance. A few moments later, there was a tentative knock on my door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there, a colorful bouquet of flowers clutched nervously in his hand. His gaze met mine, wide and searching, filled with a raw honesty that instantly disarmed me. Hi, Grandma, he said, his voice a little shaky, but undeniably tender. The word Grandma, spoken by this stranger, this unexpected gift, was a dam breaking. Years of pent-up loneliness, of yearning for connection, flooded through me. I reached out, dropping the flowers, and pulled him into a fierce embrace, weeping openly into his shoulder. He held me tight, stroking my hair, murmuring comforting words, and in that moment, the weight of 1,000 silent Christmases began to lift. Once we settled in, Ethan took a moment to look around my small, modest apartment. His eyes lingered on the worn furniture, the faded photographs, the tiny Christmas tree with its handmade ornaments. There was a profound sadness in his expression, a quiet acknowledgement of my humble circumstances. But crucially, it wasn't pity. It was something deeper, a regret for a past he had been denied, a life he hadn't shared. He began to tell me about his life in Seattle, painting a picture of a successful young man. He had a thriving career in tech, a testament to his computer science degree, which he'd earned with honors. He spoke of his serious girlfriend, Chloe, with evident affection, describing her as kind and brilliant. They shared a cozy condo and a mischievous dog named Murphy, a golden retriever with an insatiable appetite for adventure. His life was full, accomplished, yet he confessed, there was always this feeling, like something fundamental was missing. Every time I'd ask Victoria about her family, about my grandparents, she'd just shut down, get defensive. She'd always say William's family is complicated, problematic. It's better we keep our distance. His biological father, Victoria's first husband, had passed away when Ethan was just 12, leaving him with only Victoria. He'd navigated his adolescence and early adulthood with her as his sole parental figure, a bond that was clearly fraught with unspoken truths and manufactured narratives. He expressed a profound regret for not finding me sooner, his voice thick with emotion. "To think I could have been part of your life, Grandma," he said, his eyes welling up. "I could have offered support. You wouldn't have had to struggle alone." His concern was palpable. He looked directly at me, his gaze unwavering. "Grandma, please forgive my directness, but what is your financial situation like? I can see this isn't a grand lifestyle." He was gentle but firm, his awareness of my humble living conditions obvious. Then he began to reveal the stark contrast of William and Victoria's life, a world far removed from my quiet existence. "Do you know how they live?" he asked, a bitter edge to his voice. "William and Victoria have a house in the exclusive part of town, not just $500,000, but easily $1 million property. They drive luxury cars, take expensive European vacations every year. Their children attend the most prestigious private schools." He then dropped another bombshell, one that made my blood run cold. "For the past 3 years," Ethan disclosed, his voice laced with indignation, "I've been sending Victoria substantial sums of money. I'm talking about $50,000, Grandma. I sent it in increments, thinking I was contributing to family expenses, helping her out, supporting William's household, and even helping you if you needed it. Victoria told me she was having financial difficulties, that William was struggling to keep up with the expenses of their growing family. She painted a picture of noble struggle. The implication hung in the air, chilling and undeniable. She told me she would ensure some of it went to help you," he clarified, his jaw tight. "She never mentioned you were well, just that you were independent, but she never specified your situation, just that you were being taken care of. And now, seeing your apartment, knowing what she said about you, I suspect she diverted every single penny of that money. None of it ever reached you, did it?" My heart plummeted. $50,000. $50,000 that could have made a world of difference to my life, to alleviating the constant worry of bills, the strain of making ends meet on a fixed income. Victoria's web of lies was more intricate, more insidious than I could have ever imagined. Not only had she stolen my son, but she had also stolen from me, and from her own son. "No, Ethan," I whispered, tears blurring my vision again. "None of it, not a single cent." He clenched his fists, his face a mask of furious determination. "That's it then, no more talking about it. We're going to act." The gravity of his words settled over me, a terrifying mix of dread and hope. Confronting William and Victoria, revealing their carefully constructed lies, would be a seismic event. It would undoubtedly shatter their perfect world, but it might also, finally, reclaim a piece of my own. I looked into Ethan's resolute eyes, seeing a reflection of my own newfound courage. Yes, I said, my voice steadying. We will. The drive to William's house was steeped in a thick, palpable tension. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white, his jaw set in a rigid line. My own heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a terrifying cocktail of dread and exhilarating resolve. The landscape, still dusted with a fresh layer of snow, seemed to blur as we sped towards their opulent home, each passing streetlight illuminating the grim determination etched on Ethan's face. As we turned onto their street, their house came into view, its grand facade radiating an air of untouchable prosperity. Both William's gleaming BMW and Victoria's sleek Mercedes were parked in the driveway, confirming their presence. "They're home," Ethan stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet heavy with unspoken accusation. He pulled the car to the curb, parallel to their expensive vehicles, and cut the engine. He gazed at the house, a bitter twist forming on his lips. "Built with my money, apparently," he murmured, the words dripping with contempt, a stark reminder of Victoria's blatant embezzlement. We stepped out of the car, the crunch of snow under our feet the only sound breaking the cold silence. As we walked toward the front door, a wave of unsettling déjà vu washed over me. Only days prior, I had stood on this very porch, brimming with hopeful anticipation, only to be met with cruelty and rejection. Now I returned not with gifts, but with a truth that would undoubtedly shatter their illusions. The bitter wind still blew, but this time it felt less like a personal affront and more like a harbinger of the storm we were about to unleash. Ethan, his expression a mask of controlled fury, raised his hand and pressed the doorbell. The chime, the very sound that had once filled me with such longing, now seemed a prelude to reckoning. After a brief pause, the heavy oak door swung open. William stood there looking relaxed and content, clearly caught off guard. He was dressed in casual loungewear, a mug steaming in his hand, probably coffee or hot chocolate. His smile, though fleeting, conveyed the peace he had likely enjoyed since dismissing his mother on Christmas Eve. But then, his eyes landed on me. The smile vanished. His face, initially creased with surprise, hardened, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "Mom," he began, his voice laced with confusion and a touch of annoyance. "What are you doing here?" His gaze then shifted to Ethan, a complete stranger to him, standing beside me. "And who is this?" Before I could utter a word, a figure materialized behind William. Victoria. She must have heard the doorbell, or perhaps William's questioning tone had drawn her out. Her eyes, usually so calculating and composed, widened in disbelief when she saw Ethan. The color drained from her face, leaving it completely white, a stark contrast to her usually flawless complexion. A gasp escaped her lips, barely audible, yet filled with an undeniable panic. "David," she breathed, the name a raw whisper of terror. Ethan's eyes, the same piercing eyes as William's, narrowed. "Hello, Mom," he replied, his voice cold as ice, a stark, chilling contrast to her frantic whisper. There was no warmth, no affection, only a steely resolve. He stepped forward slightly, positioning himself more fully in William's view. "I thought it was time I met my step-grandmother." His gaze flicked from Victoria, whose face was now a tableau of horror, to William, who looked utterly bewildered. "You know," Ethan continued, a sardonic edge to his tone, "the one you told me was dead." William's shock was palpable. His mug clattered onto the polished marble entryway, the sound echoing loudly in the sudden, tense silence. Coffee sloshed over the pristine floor. Forgotten. He stared at Ethan, then at Victoria, his mind clearly struggling to piece together this impossible puzzle. "Dead?" he stammered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. "Victoria, what is he talking about? Who is he?" His gaze returned to Ethan, a dawning realization slowly creeping into his eyes. "Step-grandmother? You're her son?" Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked trapped, cornered, her usual composure utterly shattered. Ethan wasted no time. He cut her off before she could even formulate another lie. "Yes, William, I'm Victoria's son from her previous marriage, Ethan, not David, as she just called me, attempting another deception." He then turned his frigid gaze back to Victoria. "And for the record, Mom, my father, your first husband, has been dead for 13 years. There are no ongoing custody battles, no problematic family. He was an only child, and his parents passed away years ago. There's no other family for me to have issues with, just you." His voice hardened, radiating a quiet fury. "You excluded me because I didn't fit into your new perfect life, didn't you? Just like you tried to exclude my grandmother, Eleanor, because she didn't fit your narrative either." The accusation hung heavy in the air, undeniable and devastating. William, still reeling, looked from Victoria's ghostly face to Ethan's resolute one, then to me, standing silently beside my grandson, my own expression a reflection of the cold, hard truth. Ethan stepped forward, asserting his presence. "We're coming in," he stated, not as a request, but as an unequivocal demand. A stunned William, his face a mask of utter bewilderment and shock, instinctively stepped aside, his hand still dripping coffee. Forgotten. The heavy oak doors swung open fully, revealing their cold, showroom-like living room. As we walked past William and into the house, I felt a strange sense of vindication. The perfect world they had so meticulously crafted was about to unravel, thread by thread. We stood in the cold, opulent living room, the air thick with unspoken accusations. The aroma of forgotten coffee hung faintly in the air, a stark contrast to the emotional stench of deception now permeating the space. William, still reeling from the revelation, finally found his voice, a raw, guttural sound. He turned to Victoria, his eyes wide with betrayal. "Victoria," he demanded, his voice trembling with an unstable mixture of disbelief and fury, "why did you lie to me? About having a son? All these years?" Cornered, her perfect facade crumbling, Victoria lashed out, her eyes blazing with a hatred so intense it almost made me flinch. She swung her gaze to me, her voice sharp and venomous. "This is all your fault," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. "You've been plotting, haven't you? Turning William against me, poisoning him with your pathetic stories." Ethan stepped forward, his composure unnervingly calm, a stark contrast to Victoria's volatile outburst. "No, Mom," he corrected her, his voice devoid of emotion. "Eleanor hasn't done anything but live her life. You're the one who spun the web of lies. You isolated both of us. You fabricated stories to create your perfect little family, one that didn't include any complications from your parents or any needy relatives that might disrupt your polished image." Victoria, though visibly shaken, still clung to her narrative. Her defensive posture hardened. "I was protecting our relationship," she retorted, her voice regaining a fraction of its usual imperiousness. "Ethan was difficult, always causing problems. And Eleanor," she sneered, glancing at me with utter contempt, "she's so demanding, so needy, always calling, always needing something. I was trying to shield William from all that baggage." The audacity of her words ignited a quiet fire within me. I stepped forward, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Needy?" I questioned, my gaze unwavering as I met her hateful stare. "You spoke of me as a burden, Victoria. You never offered me a penny. In fact, you ensured I was unwelcome in my own son's home, particularly on a night meant for family." A sarcastic, humorless laugh erupted from Ethan, filling the tense silence in the room. He turned to William, his eyes alight with a cold fury. "Needy," she says. "Problematic," she says. "You know, William, for the past 3 years, I've been sending Victoria $50,000. $50,000. I thought I was contributing to our family, helping her support you, believing she was using some of it to care for Grandma, perhaps for her medical bills, or home repairs, as she claimed. I truly believed I was supporting my mother and ensuring my grandmother was looked after." William's eyes, already wide with shock, now dilated further. His gaze snapped back to Victoria, a dawning horror creeping into his expression. $50,000? He whispered, the sound barely audible. "Victoria, what is he talking about? What medical bills? What home repairs? You told me your mother was managing your old apartment and that you were doing just fine financially. You said we were comfortable." Ethan didn't wait for Victoria to keyser another elaborate lie. He pointed an accusing finger at her, his voice ringing with cold conviction. "She wasn't having financial difficulties, William. She was funneling my money into her and your lavish lifestyle. She used my money, meant to help our family, to fund your expensive cars, your European vacations, your luxurious house, all while actively keeping our actual family apart, isolating us with a tissue-thin web of lies. The air vibrated with the weight of Ethan's accusation. The sheer scale of Victoria's deceit laid bare. I stepped forward, my voice quiet but firm, ensuring every word cut through the stunned silence directly to William. While you two were living in luxury, William, I began, my gaze locking with his, while Victoria was taking my grandson's money to fund her extravagant tastes, she called me a burden. She locked me out of your home on Christmas Eve in the freezing cold, after your own invitation, William. She called me this old woman, a pain, and told me to go to a senior center. And you, William, my voice broke slightly, you stood inside, laughing, while she did it. The full impact of my words hit William like a physical blow. He stared at Victoria, his face slowly transforming. The confusion was replaced by a mixture of pure horror and disgust, contorting his features. He looked from me to Ethan, then back to his wife, seeing her for the first time through a lens stripped of all pretense. The polished veneer had shattered, revealing the monstrous deceit beneath. Victoria, her face still pale, weakly tried to defend her Christmas Eve actions. William, you know we had important guests. Mr. Henderson, his wife, they were crucial for your business. Her presence would have been inappropriate, disruptive. She tried to regain a semblance of control, her voice regaining a sliver of its usual sharp tone. But William wasn't buying it. His voice rose, sharp and challenging, cutting through her flimsy excuses. Inappropriate? Disruptive? What kind of monster are you, Victoria, to treat my mother like that on Christmas Eve because of business? Cornered, desperate, Victoria played her final cruel card, a move designed to deflect blame and implicate William. You hypocrite, she spat, her voice shrill with desperation. Don't pretend you're so innocent. You yourself called her a problem. You yourself called her needy. You said she was becoming a burden, and that we needed to set boundaries with her, that she was disrupting our new life. The words hung in the air, a devastating silence following her outburst. William's face, already a canvas of shock and anger, now faltered. The truth in her accusation was undeniable. He had indeed used those words. He had indeed expressed those sentiments to Victoria, allowing her to further weaponize his own callousness against me. He couldn't fully deny it. William's stunned silence, a chilling admission of his own complicity, was the final straw for Ethan. His patience, stretched taut throughout the confrontation, finally snapped. His eyes, now blazing with a raw, righteous anger, fixed on Victoria. You are a liar and a manipulator, he declared, his voice cutting through the heavy air like a knife. You took my money, meant for family, and squandered it on this extravagant lie you call a life. And you treated my grandmother, Eleanor, like garbage, like a disposable inconvenience. He paced, his words gaining momentum, driven by years of buried resentment. But what truly infuriates me, Victoria, he continued, his voice heavy with sorrow and fury, is that you stole from us. You stole 25 years of memories, 25 years of connection between a grandmother and her grandson. You stole a family, all to protect your precious, fabricated image. Victoria, whose face had been a kaleidoscope of fear and anger, now crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of pure, unadulterated frustration, the bitter cry of a woman whose carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. You don't understand the pressure, she wailed, her voice cracking. The pressure to maintain this marriage, this lifestyle, to be perfect for William. I stepped forward, my voice clear and firm, cutting through her self-serving melodrama. Love and family, I stated, my gaze meeting William's for a fleeting moment, are not complications, Victoria. They are the essence of life. In a sudden, explosive fit of cold fury, Ethan spun around and kicked the ornate front door, which had remained slightly ajar since our entry. The heavy wood slammed shut with a reverberating bang that echoed like a gunshot through the silent house. You're finished, Mom, he declared, his voice flat, devoid of any filial affection, carrying the undeniable weight of finality. Victoria's face, already pale, drained of any remaining color. The finality of his words seemed to register, chilling her to the bone. William, who had been staring at her with a deepening horror, now looked utterly sickened, as if he were seeing a stranger, a monster, for the first time. Ethan wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, his thumb rapidly scrolling through a document. "And that's not even the half of it, William," he said, turning to my son. "My private investigator discovered a few interesting details about your wife's past. Details she conveniently omitted." He paused for dramatic effect, letting the tension build. "Victoria here, she's been married 4 times. Not once, as she led you to believe, but 4 times before you, each one a calculated step in a predatory pattern." He detailed her modus operandi with chilling precision. She would charm men with money, gain access to their finances, then either systematically drain their accounts or, in some cases, wait for their convenient demise to collect life insurance. Ethan's voice grew colder, sharper, as he delivered the coup de grace. Her most recent prior marriage, to a man named Richard Peterson, ended just 8 months ago. She added herself as beneficiary to his life insurance policy 6 months before his sudden, very convenient heart attack. The police initially ruled it natural causes, but with this new information, they're reopening the case. William stumbled backward, physically recoiling from Victoria, his face a mask of utter disbelief and mounting terror. "No," he gasped, shaking his head vehemently. "No, that's impossible. She wouldn't." Ethan held up his phone, displaying the digital copies of marriage certificates, bank statements, and insurance policies. "It's all here, William. Legal documents proving her fraud, her pattern, her criminal intent." He then pointed to a specific line on the screen. "And while we're on the subject of money, Victoria also diverted $73,000 of your combined money, funds you thought were going into joint investments, into a secret private account, just for herself. More fraud, more lies." Victoria, now fully exposed, let out a desperate, piercing scream. "William, I love you. I did it for us." Her words were choked with frantic desperation, but they rang hollow. Ethan's retort was swift and brutal. "You don't love anyone, Mom. You don't love anyone but yourself and the illusion of wealth you chase." The accumulated rage within William finally erupted. He lunged at Victoria, his hands clenching into fists, stopping just short of physical contact. "You absolute monster!" he roared, his voice thick with unadulterated fury and disgust. "You tricked me. You used me." Victoria, cornered and with nowhere left to run, turned her venomous gaze back to me, unleashing a torrent of blame. "This is all your fault, you old hag. You and your bastard grandson. You ruined everything." Her voice rose to a hysterical shriek, threatening, "I'll make you pay for this, Eleanor. I swear it." Just as the chaos threatened to engulf the room, Ethan delivered the final crushing blow. He put his phone away and looked directly at Victoria, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. "Too late, Mom. I already forwarded all of the private investigators' findings, along with my own bank statements showing the money I sent, to the FBI Fraud Division this morning. They're probably already here." As if on cue, a sharp, authoritative knock resonated from the front door. It was no tentative tap, but a firm, decisive rap. Ethan strode purposefully to the door and opened it. Standing on the porch were 2 individuals in dark suits, their expressions unreadable. "Special Agents Davis and Kim," the woman introduced herself, her voice crisp and professional. "We have a warrant for the arrest of Victoria Caldwell for multiple counts of fraud and suspicion of murder for insurance money." Victoria, seeing the agents, let out a choked cry and made a desperate lunge for the back door, clearly attempting to flee, but Ethan was quicker. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path with his body. "Not today, Mom," he said, his voice cold and unwavering. The agents moved with practiced efficiency. Within moments, Victoria was subdued, her hands cuffed behind her back. Her high-pitched protests and desperate threats towards me were met with indifference by the agents, who simply escorted her out of the house, her frantic screams fading as the front door closed behind them, leaving William, Ethan, and me in the stunned, ringing silence. 6 months had passed since that explosive Christmas week, and my life had transformed in ways I never dared to imagine. I, Eleanor, was now in my new spacious apartment, a generous gift from Ethan. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating a space that felt light, airy, and most importantly, truly mine. The walls, once bare, were now adorned with a tapestry of memories, cherished old photos of Arthur and a young William, nestled alongside new, vibrant pictures of Ethan, William, and me, slowly building a shared history, brick by emotional brick. I hummed a soft tune as I prepared Sunday dinner, the aroma of roasting chicken filling the air. William, looking more relaxed and genuinely at peace than I had seen him in years, walked into the kitchen. The divorce from Victoria had been swift and brutal for him, a public humiliation he was still grappling with. He was actively undergoing therapy, facing the profound guilt of his own blindness and complicity, a necessary step on his path to healing. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile, and leaned against the counter, observing me. From the living room, Ethan's voice drifted in, low and excited. He was on the phone, successfully convincing his girlfriend, Chloe, to make the move from Seattle to join him here. Their conversation was punctuated by laughter and murmurs of affection, a happy counterpoint to the quiet domesticity in the kitchen. William watched me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Mom," he began, his voice soft. "Are you really happy?" I paused, a knife mid-chop, and looked at him. The question hung in the air, simple yet profound. For the first time in decades, the answer wasn't a brave facade, or a quiet resignation, or a desperate wish. It was a genuine, resounding yes. "Yes, William," I said, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the oven. "I truly am." He nodded, a profound sadness in his eyes. I want to tell you something, Mom." He hesitated, then continued, his voice heavy with regret. "Victoria, she systematically intercepted everything. All your letters, the cards you sent on my birthdays, the invitations to holiday dinners. All of it. She ensured I never saw a single one." He pulled a folded, aged envelope from his pocket, the paper soft from years of storage. "This," he said, handing it to me. "I found it hidden in her old desk among some of her other personal papers. It was sent right after we got married." I unfolded the letter, my eyes immediately recognizing my own handwriting. It was a letter I'd written after his wedding, a heartfelt expression of my unconditional love, my hopes for his happiness, and an assurance that my door would always be open. My eyes blurred as I read my own words, words I believed had fallen on deaf ears, words he never received. The crushing weight of years of silent, unanswered love settled heavily upon me once more. William continued, his voice thick with self-reproach. "And it wasn't just the personal things. She also poisoned my professional relationships. She'd call my colleagues, my clients, spreading lies about your instability, your harassment, painting you as a difficult, needy mother who was trying to sabotage my career. The breathtaking cruelty of Victoria's manipulation, her relentless campaign to sever our connection, wounded me deeply. It was one thing to be excluded. It was another to have my love twisted into something toxic, my character slandered, all to serve her selfish agenda." Ethan walked in then, having just finished his call with Chloe. He saw the letter in my hand, the tears in my eyes, and the pained expression on William's face. William quickly explained the discovery of the intercepted letters and the extent of Victoria's malicious slander. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Even from behind bars," he mused, "she finds ways to cause pain." "Don't let her, Ethan," I advised, reaching out to gently touch his arm. "Don't let her poison your heart. Forgiveness, William, is not for her. It's for us. It's for our own peace, to release the lingering anger and hurt, to move forward." Ethan nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression replacing his anger. "Her crucial mistake," he mused, "was underestimating the power of love. Even buried under years of lies, even ignored and suppressed, genuine love always finds a way back. It always returns." He smiled then, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "And speaking of returning," he announced, turning to me and William, "Chloe's moving here. She found a great nursing job at the hospital." "This isn't starting over," he declared, his voice buoyant with optimism. "This is finally starting. He wasn't finished. And there's more, Ethan said, his excitement palpable. I hired a genealogist, to dig deeper into my family history, to really understand my roots, and she's uncovered a whole network of long-lost relatives, distant cousins, great aunts, all eager to reconnect. A whole network of family connections, Grandma, people who want to know us. William and Ethan exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. William cleared his throat. Mom, he began, a tremor of emotion in his voice. Ethan and I have been talking. We want to buy a large house, a house big enough for all of us, you, me, Ethan, and Chloe when she moves. We want to be a real family, Mom, a real one this time. Tears streamed down my face again, but these were tears of profound joy, of overwhelming gratitude. The quiet hope that had flickered within me for so long had finally erupted into a glorious blaze. Yes, I managed to whisper, my voice thick with emotion. Yes, I would love that. 3 months later, I stood in the sun-drenched living room of our new Victorian home, a beautiful, sprawling house with enough room for laughter, for quiet moments, for building a future. I watched Chloe, Ethan, and William laughing together in the garden, their voices carrying through the open window, a symphony of genuine happiness. It felt profoundly different, wonderful. I no longer thought of Victoria in prison, facing the consequences of her monstrous deceit. Her fate was her own. My focus was on this new, vibrant reality, on the genuine happiness blossoming around me. This, I realized, was the ultimate revenge. A life lived fully, authentically, surrounded by love. I overheard Ethan talking to Chloe, their voices soft and planning. He spoke excitedly of their future, of raising a family in this home, of having me and William as integral parts of their lives, always. He spoke of traditions, of holidays, of a future filled with togetherness. As the setting sun cast a golden glow over my new home, I realized, after 70 years of longing, of sacrifice, of quiet sorrow, I was finally home, surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally, not out of pity, not out of obligation, but with genuine open hearts. My story was no longer one of enduring. It was one of belonging.